And on the following slide, you'll notice that we're talking a little bit about a report here. So this is a report that was put out by the CD Foundation. The Continuous Delivery Foundation is basically a foundation that lists a bunch of open source projects and companies we're a member. And this was a report put together by Slashdata, and it's entitled "The State of Continuous Delivery." It's been done for 4 continuous years, and this is the latest version. This just came out last month, and I think it was a good reflection of what folks are doing out in the ecosystem around continuous deployment and continuous delivery, and I thought it would be interesting to mention here. These are some of the key highlights. The one that I want to draw your attention to is the top right corner in the second column there. It says there's a strong correlation between the number of DevOps technologies used by developers and their likelihood to being a top performer across all 3 performance metrics. What that means is if you use more tools and you're using them in a process-based way with DevOps in mind, you tend to be a higher performing team. Now, that may be a little bit of a disconnect for some folks because they're like, well, wait, more tools means more complexity. Not necessarily. If you talk about pipelines, you talk about your build pipelines in terms of testing, and then you move over to the CD side of it with deployment. And then you can take into consideration things like observability and monitoring. These things turn out to be really, really important when building out software. So on the next slide, we see a chart that reflects some of this. And this is really a state of affairs relative to how people are using CI/CD tools and the change that's occurred since Q1 2022 to now Q1 2023. Now, the bars that are in light green are Q1 2022. And what you're noticing, the big outliers here is, first and foremost, self-hosted CI/CD tools saw a huge drop. What that means is a lot of folks are utilizing managed environments. So you're seeing a huge drop, moving away from self-hosting with CI servers like Jenkins or TeamCity, moving towards the cloud. And that's not an indictment of those tools. Those are great tools. In fact, we utilize those tools ourselves. It just means that the maintenance and the amount of work necessary to host those things maybe not have the same payoff that you would like. Some other outlines, of course, is the fact that when utilizing these things and where we're seeing a big change in terms of DevOps technologies is, around issue tracking, source control, etc. So this is sort of the state of affairs relative to these things. And, there might be some surprises here, but when it comes to deployment, this is obviously an important aspect of your CI/CD pipeline. So on the next slide, we see a little bit of this reflected in that performance metric that I mentioned earlier. So if you're utilizing, on average, there's about 4.5 technologies used in a typical CI/CD pipeline. What this report states is that if you use anywhere around 10, you're going to see more likelihood for that team to be a higher performing team. So in this observation, basically, they said the more technologies you use, the better off you'll be relative to a DevOps strategy. And so in the next slide, we also see this also reflected in terms of that performance. So what you'll see here is that there's a bit of a nuance here, but those folks who deploy multiple times a day or happen to have a smaller lead time or a smaller time to restore, that sort of MTTR metric that we all know and love via DORA. If you're practicing those DevOps practices, you'll see a better performance relatively overall. Now, where it starts to blow out, obviously, is when you're not deploying that often, like say once per month, et cetera. We're seeing this reflected by our customers today. So we're seeing customers, as I said before, we have customers, many customers deploying multiple times a day. In fact, we have customers who deploy on demand. We have customers who deploy hundreds of times a day. And this is the norm for them. And it turns out to be a big win for them because it allows them to deploy quickly, allows them to deploy reliably. And this is part of the sort of case for Octopus in general.